Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Discover the Power of Full Service EDI, presented by Bill Gosted. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the question section or the chat box of your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We're also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. And finally, we would appreciate your participation in our polls throughout the session and our closing survey. With that said, we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us. SWK is here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing you tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. Today, we're super excited to be joined by our partners at SPS Commerce. So whether you're here to explore a new solution or you're just here to learn, don't hesitate to ask any questions you have while we have experts present. And as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. Check us out and give us a follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube so you don't miss out. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's hand it over to Bill for the main event.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you guys, thank you all. Certainly appreciate you guys taking the time. I will tell you up front, this will not take an hour. I promise you that. But really, the purpose of today is just to kind of give you a sense of, who SPS Commerce is, the customers we work with, what we do, and kind of our approach to. I'll just be pretty direct. Our approach to EDI. And kind of our focus in specific markets. I will say this from a personal note: this audience and this group is near and dear to my heart, as I worked for SWK for almost 8 years, which we'll touch on here in just a minute. But again, like Courtney mentioned, if you guys have any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. Whether that's throughout the conversation or towards the end. We'll address all of them at the end to make sure we're answering all your questions, regardless of what they are. So maybe we'll start real quick on kind of who SPS Commerce is. So some of you may know who we are, some of you may not. At the end of the day, we are a full service retail technology provider, and really what that means is we focus in on EDI. If you're familiar with that term, and maybe I'll apologize up front for those that do. It can be very complex, and we'll get into a couple reasons why here in a little bit. But SPS, we're based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we have about 2,500 employees globally. I would say 80%, if not more, of those employees are actually based in our Minneapolis office. We're 100% cloud-based technology. We're public and we're growing. And I think where that's important is we're reinvesting that growth back into the business, both in terms of people, but also our technology. For those on the call that are familiar with the term Mapadoc, which is a integration tool that actually SPS acquired from SWK 4 years ago, that's a really good indicator of kind of the reinvestment back into our solutions and our people to make sure we're supporting our customers and where you all are going long term. So that would just be kind of important, just to level set on kind of who we are and kind of our presence within the ecosystem. Let's kind of get into who we work with. I mentioned the term EDI, which is pretty direct, but for those that don't know it or don't know how to spell it, that's completely fine. Right, we'll get into that here of kind of who it's meant for and the reasons behind it. But at the highest level, SPS Commerce, we work with really 3 types of organizations. One of which being buying orgs. So think of those as traditional retailers out there, or grocers or distributors buying product from a large group of suppliers. So that's really actually where EDI was born out of. When you think of like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Grainger, Fastenal down the line, they engage with a lot of suppliers, some of which probably some of you are on this call right now, and they require EDI. So we actually work with those buying orgs and those retailers every single day to build out to them, or actually a lot of them are actually our customers, where we're building their EDI specs and then connecting them to their supplier community. Second, which I would have to imagine most of you on this call kind of fit into this bucket in some capacity, is you are a supplier selling into a retailer, grocer, or wholesale distributor that requires EDI. So I would say in terms of the amount of customers they have, most fit in this bucket where you are selling product to those buying orgs. And then lastly, I don't know if anyone on this call is a traditional logistics provider. I would probably have to, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would say you probably are working with a logistics provider in some capacity. What I mean by that is, a 3PL, a third-party warehouse, where you're outsourcing your warehouse operations to them in some capacity, or carriers or what have you. Even though they're not the ones managing that relationship directly with the retailer or your customer, they play a very significant role in the fulfillment of those goods back to the retailer, both from a requirement standpoint, but also a timing standpoint, and really representing your business. And the reason why I touch on that at the end is that has certainly blown up over the past couple of years. The more customers we work with, whether that be suppliers or retailers, the more conversations we're getting in where they are working with a logistics provider that is handling at least a component of their fulfillment process. So let's maybe a good time to talk. We talked about who SPS is, the customers we work with, but maybe let's get a little deeper into EDI and what it is. Again, some of this may be very 101 for many of you on the call, and some of you not. It's just helpful that regardless of where you're at in your journey, I like to level set a little bit or get ourselves grounded. So if you're not familiar with EDI, like I mentioned before, it is a requirement to do business with retailers, grocers, distributors, if you are a vendor or supplier of them, meaning they are transacting their business documents to you, purchase orders via EDI. So it's just essentially a mechanism versus them calling in or faxing or emailing their orders. They are sending it through a protocol called EDI, which you as a supplier have to be compliant with. Same thing on the reverse. We're like, hey, they not only expect you to receive the POs, but also send back acknowledgments, how I've shipped, or how I packed the product or shipment. And then lastly, invoicing. We are very well aware there are hundreds of more EDI documents out there. I just like to level set of the most common ones, just to get ourselves grounded, depending on where you're at within your journey with EDI or with your customers. And it's something that you're doing today, or it's like something I'm being asked to do, but still have really no clue of what it is or what the purpose of it is. So, by the way, that's okay. Because the way that we look at EDI, and I'd say the way that EDI is structured, whether you're leveraging SPS Commerce today or not, it's a standard that retailers build out to, but it is anything but a standard. And what I mean by that is every retailer or buying org is different in terms of the data they want you to send and receive, how they want you to send and receive it, and then the different documents, business documents, they may require of you to be compliant with. So like I mentioned before, we talked about orders, PO acknowledgments, ASNs, invoices. They may have PO changes, cash receipts, you name it. So it's, we like to get ourselves level set on. It's called a standard. It is not. And that's just the nature of it. And then, the technology aspect of EDI is just one component of it, and we'll walk through what that looks like. But there is a people and process component, whether that's with SPS or not, that is a huge factor to EDI and avoiding common challenges. And actually, it's just as important as the technology. So we talked about, again, our customers we work with, the types of, but I think a good place to level set as well is, even if we're talking about the same bucket, like this is called out suppliers, or you're a supplier selling into retailers, you could all be at a different point in your journey in terms of the customers you're working with, the requirements they have of you, things of that nature. So as you can, if you look on the left side of your screen, the new and evolving EDI needs, we are in conversations every day with organizations where EDI is completely new. They don't know what it is. And by the way, this is okay. It's just the nature of it. They don't know what it is. They just know they have to do it based upon what their customer is telling them. So you can imagine those conversations are a bit different versus the next two buckets, where it's, hey, I've been doing EDI for a number of years. I have multiple partners or customers set up, but it's really difficult to know those requirements, like I mentioned before, and I'm having to manage it across different platforms where it becomes really difficult to avoid chargebacks. It becomes really difficult to avoid those complexities, not just the requirements, but it becomes kind of very cumbersome for those organizations to manage because they've kind of put those components in different aspects within their business, not only from a resourcing standpoint, but also a technology standpoint. And then the last component, which we're actually seeing quite a bit these days, is, hey, I'm going through a digital transformation within my business, meaning I'm replacing my overall system that I use to run my business. I'm either being acquired or I am acquiring, a number of entities, and it's a system replacement is coming into play on that, and EDI comes along for the ride. So as you can imagine, like, those conversations are different based upon where you're at within that life cycle. Most of our customers fit in multiple buckets here, some more than others, but just know those challenges that I mentioned before, they don't change. They're the same, whether you've been doing it for 20 years or you're just getting into it. And
And
the
I
way
think,
that we
Bill,
look, oh yeah, go ahead.
no, and I was just going to say, I think, Bill, that we want to run a quick poll here to see, where everyone in the audience is at in this journey.
That sounds awesome.
So we are asking, what bucket does your company fall into? Are you in that new and evolving EDI need area? Are you currently EDI setup? Are you evaluating a new system? Just kind of get an idea of where everyone's at in this journey. And thank you for everyone who's answered so far. We'll leave this open for just a couple more seconds. You're still deliberating. Awesome. And Bill, it looks like we're, a little bit across the board. So we've got, about 60% of the audience is in that new and evolving EDI needs stage. We've got 30%, evaluating new system needs, and about 15% managing some different solutions.
Okay. That's great. I think that gives hopefully some of this is resonating with you all that have been doing it a while. I will say to those that are new and evolving, I know it can be scary. Don't allow it to be. It's everyone's in that when you're just getting out, it can be scary, but we're here to assist with that, both in terms of educating on what goes into it and how you may want to think about it. So happy to have a dialogue with all of you and this, and those making that system replacement. We go through that every single day with our customers. So happy to address, based upon following this call, where each of you guys are at, if you guys have certainly specific questions. So I thought it would be important because we'll talk a little bit about kind of the approach here at SPS, both in terms of our technology and how we support our customers. But I thought it would be important just for you all to see like the problems we are solving for, regardless of where you fit within the supply chain. So again, I think most of you all, and I could be wrong, but like most of you all are probably on the left side of the screen when you're selling to trading partners or retailers or grocers or distributors, and kind of in those buckets around, like we just went through new evolving needs, different trading partner requirements, complexities around the supply chain, or going through a system replacement. And then, but I would also say, because I'll kind of mention this, down the line as well, like we're working with organizations that are a retailer, are a grocer, are a distributor, and regardless of size, where they are actually buying from a large, either key suppliers or a large group of suppliers, where the problems are not from a technology standpoint, they're similar, but just from a business problem perspective, they're actually much different, whether that be reactive order management. So like, all right, I'm working with my suppliers, but I'm not being proactive on how I'm managing my orders. There's a fair amount of inventory inefficiencies based upon how I'm ordering across my vendor community. Inaccurate invoicing, so the invoicing that you may be getting back from your vendor community or key suppliers, those can be consistently inaccurate, which those three then result in a fairly poor customer experience. So going back to your customers, and then your inability to actually effectively add suppliers within your ecosystem in a scalable fashion. So the problems are common across the board, depending on where you're sitting and where you're at within your life cycle. Just thought it'd be important to reiterate again the ones we touched on just a minute ago, but also ones we're seeing, from a procurement standpoint as well. And another component that I think is important to touch on, and actually this is kind of a wake up call for me, a couple years back, coming from the ERP EDI space was because we were so focused in on the order data, the shipping data around EDI, around retail, what grocery, what have you. But we have been taking a step back these past 3 years, looking at not just like the order and shipping data, but like what actually goes into managing a successful buyer and seller relationship. And at the end of the day, what it does, it requires continuous exchange of data, whether that means the item data. So like you're not going to be getting any orders if you're not able to successfully share your item data with your customers. So that's like step number one, that we're really, educating our customers on, and what goes into. I already mentioned like receiving orders via EDI, shipping those, managing the inventory effectively across our channels, whether that be bulk or DC, or especially in today's day and age, direct to consumer or marketplaces. Those are coming up more and more. Invoicing, of course, you want to get paid. You want to get paid timely, and you want to get paid accurately. And then, hey, I'm doing all that right. I'm sharing my item data. It's great. I'm getting orders. I'm shipping on time. I'm actually managing my inventory pretty well, and I'm getting paid, or a combination of all the above. And then it's like, all right, like, how am I performing, right? So like we call it sell-through or sales data, meaning the retailers are sharing, like we're seeing this more and more because these retailers who historically have not been completely open and willing to share this data are to have a competitive advantage. I mean, they're sharing how your products are performing in certain regions, by product line, in certain stores, or on their website as well. So what we are finding is like we need to take a step back here in terms of not just the order and shipping data, but across the environment, to make sure that our customers and suppliers and retailers are exchanging data effectively, efficiently, and in a meaningful way. Because if you don't, it leads to some pretty significant, business issues. I'm not going to read all these on the screen, but like I mentioned before, like, typically where our customers, when they're getting into this, they're owning it themselves. Like it's solving only part of the problem. There is a significant reliance on IT internally, which then can equate to like slow onboarding of existing or new partners, chargebacks and fees, a lot of unexpected costs in terms of, hey, like overhead internally to manage this ecosystem. So these are very common issues and solutions, and quote unquote solutions and consequences that we see with organizations in this space of, hey, I'm running into this. These are the problems that I'm coming into. And so what we have done on the SPS side is we standardize that on behalf of our customers. And it really just, it starts with our network. So I mentioned this at the beginning. What SPS is reinvesting in every single day for the past 25 years is our network. It is the largest EDI network in the world, with over 1 million plus pre-map connections, 4,500 trading partners or buying orgs. So think of those again, those retailers, distributors, grocers that I mentioned before, that are buying goods from a large supplier community, over 1,000 plus 3PLs. So again, if you're exchanging with 3PLs a day, or you're like, hey, I'm thinking about outsourcing my operations, we work with 3PLs very, very closely. And then across the board, we manage every channel and every fulfillment model on behalf of our customers, whether that be e-commerce, marketplace, or traditional retail wholesale. And that's where it starts, like in terms of like, all right, SPS, what is your approach? It starts with our network. And then as we get into the specific ecosystems that we really double down in, and this is why the partnership with SWK has been, so successful in terms of how we're managing our customers together, is our experience and expertise in a couple different ecosystems. So first, I'll start with Acumatica. I'm not going to read all this on the screen, but just know that in terms of our investment in this space, it is a highly strategic market for us, both in terms of the solution that we have internally for it, not just with our network, but our embedded module that lives within Acumatica, the number of customers that we have, and our alignment with partners like SWK and Acumatica as a publisher. We have a whole team internally that all they do is focus in on Acumatica development. These are SPS employees, Acumatica development, Acumatica delivery, and Acumatica support. So we own that end to end on behalf of our customers. And that's the same thing with Sage. It's literally the same story. So I don't want to be too redundant, meaning the technology that we have is owned and operated by SPS. We have a whole team around that's focused on Sage delivery, Sage support, and Sage product and development. And we're aligned with SWK and Sage as a publisher as well, because these are both highly strategic markets for SBS in terms of the number of customers that we have, and our continued investment in each one of those ecosystems. So talked about the network, talked about a little bit, which we certainly can take away here, is our approach in each one of those ecosystems. And again, if you are interested in hearing more based upon where you're at in your journey on the technical component, happy to do so. I think that's actually something probably worthwhile coming out of this. But we talked a lot about our network and our approach in each of those ecosystems. I think it will be important too, is like, all right, like SBS, that's great. Now, how do you like manage this? And the way that we approach it is we are very well aware that EDI is hard, it is complex, and it is not a wanted core competency of our customers. And so where we come into play is we look at ourselves as a full service partner, meaning we are managing the different components of EDI on behalf of our customers, maybe I'll say this too, whether you're doing it with SBS or somebody else, these are the components that you have to do with EDI to have a successful setup and management of. It doesn't matter if you're using SBS or not. These are the components that go into it, whether that be the technology at the network level, the connection level, the integration level, the expertise with those trading partners, because they have teams on their side that manage EDI internally or actually work directly with SBS, designing, configuring the solution, communicating with those trading partners, because you have to go through testing and launching for each. And then once it's up and running, proactive monitor and analysis of the data, and then ongoing resource and access to those resources. Because for those 10% that have been doing this a while, and hopefully you're shaking your head, EDI is not you install it and you're done, whether you're adding customers or not. I think a good example of this is in last year alone, SPS made 9,000 changes to our network based upon changes coming down from retailers to their EDI requirements alone. So that's not meant to scare anybody. That is literally just meant to kind of give you the reality of the situation. Because when we look at other options in the marketplace, we find that they're not covering all components of the EDI structure and management of, meaning you may be getting the piece of technology to get the data in and out. There is some design and configuration assistance that they give you, and there's some ongoing resource access report, but a lot of that lifting falls on you or a consultant that you've engaged with to manage that. And our approach is very simple. It's like, we don't want our customers having to become EDI experts. That's what we do day in and day out. So like I mentioned before, we have a full team across, set up by system and by market, because it's not a one size fits all approach. EDI never will be, but with the team that leads the implementation, the testing and consulting on behalf of you, we are proactively engaging with your trading partners to ensure production readiness, troubleshoot any issues, and manage those changes that I talked about before. And then ongoing access to training and education based upon new features that we have, new enhancements, and one-on-one support as needed. So this hopefully gives you a view. I know we talked about a lot. I don't want to overwhelm all of you on EDI, the network, the components, but when you're looking at it visually, this is where SPS comes into play, whether you're running Sage or Acumatica, where our network is managing the business rules, we're standardizing the data, we're managing the communication both at a technical perspective, but also a resource perspective with those different trading partners, because our team of experts are there. And that's regardless if you're receiving orders from your customers, you can see here on the left side of your screen, or on the right side of your screen, whether you're managing a group of suppliers. There's one here that should be that I probably should put in there, is the 3PL logistics component as well, because that allows us and you candidly to drive automation within your four walls, gain EDI compliance, which actually probably should be number one, eliminate that complexity that comes around with supply chain, and give you more proactive insights of, hey, as I'm adding customers, as I'm thinking about new revenue streams, kind of this can be off your plate in a worry you don't have to necessarily think about. So that's the way that we look at it, because with SPS and the organizations that leverage us, they're able to really experienced our full service team. There's an increased speed and efficiency, both in terms of getting new trading partners up and running and managing those different changes, and candidly with the day-to-day in terms of our solutions living and breathing directly within the platform. So it allows for a single location and process for all orders, which then results in reduced keystrokes. It mitigates and reduces manual entry of errors and really insulate you from the changes. So that's where we come into play to allow for a scalable option, both with working with you as a customer, but also working with your customers as well to avoid the complexities of EDI falling on you. So some of my team is on. I know Mo is not in office today, but Sam is on as well. We have, like I mentioned before, we have dedicated resources by ecosystem across the board. And if you guys have any questions, I'm sure Courtney and team will share this following. Please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. Both Sam and Mo, they've both been at SPS for a number of years. They care and just want to be a resource for our partners like SWK and organizations like you, regardless of what question you have. Trust me, I ask them a lot. There are no stupid questions, especially in this space. So just thought it would be important to touch on there. And Courtney, I as I kind of walk through the number of slides and content, hopefully didn't overwhelm anyone. I'm not sure if there were any questions that came throughout or questions coming in now.
Yes. So we've got a couple questions that have come throughout. So we're going to run one more quick poll. So we'd appreciate your participation. Just wondering if you'd like to learn more about SPS Commerce. And, double tapping while you're answering that poll, you can also submit any questions you have if you have not submitted them yet in the questions section of the GoToWebinar or the chat box. And I will get those off to Bill. So we'll leave this poll open for just a few more seconds, and then we're going to dive right into Q&A. Awesome. And you can also let us know in the post-webinar survey if you'd like some more information if you missed out on the poll just then. So Bill, the first question that I have for you is, you talked a lot about SPS, your approach, and the customer experience, but what can you tell us about the technology? How is it managed? Where does it live?
Yeah, I probably could have done a better job diving in. I know I touched on it at a high level, but a better job of talking a little bit more about that. So, like I mentioned before, both regardless if you're running Sage or Acumatica, so the technology is kind of twofold. One is the network, right? So handling the connection out to those retailers or those different buying orgs or 3PLs. We handle all that in our cloud-based solution. So that's not a piece of software sitting with your environment managing those communications. That's housed and owned by SPS. And then within each, again, it doesn't matter, Sage or Acumatica, it's interchangeable. We have an EDI module that lives and breathes directly within the ERP platform. So our customer, like all the mappings, the configurations that, again, we manage on behalf of our customers, live within the ERP. So that way we can actually read into the data that you have in the system. And then two, your team does not need to leave the system to process EDI. So, again, if you guys have any additional, more detailed questions than that, we're certainly more than happy to set up a more pull back the hood, if you will, demonstration for you all of the tech based upon the system you're running and kind of what your specific needs are.
Great. Our next question is, we currently use multiple solutions to manage our connections, mainly because our customers tell us so. How would that work with SPS? Can I consolidate these different connections?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually mentioned this earlier too. So one of our engagement, we actually go out and engage retailers every single day. So for those on the call that aren't leveraging some of the solutions I mentioned today, or maybe using an alternative, you might have had to test through us. So that's a good example. We're going out and saying, hey, Mr. Retailer, we'll build your EDI requirements and engage your supplier community. But we're not forcing you to use us. You just have to certify through us because that's what the customer has engaged in. And we're not the only ones doing that. So just because a customer goes out and says, hey, I'm using solution ABC, go talk to them, doesn't mean you have to use that. We a lot of our connections that we have out to the retailer community aren't using SPS as their EDI provider, but have EDI capabilities. We're just connecting out to them because they're using EDI that makes their life easier. Like that's the reason why they do it. But you can also take that same approach for you, meaning not just like the approach that's like, hey, this is kind of how I want it set up and delivered, but also to the technology options that are out there, meaning not just the network, but the integration into the system. Most of these solutions don't have like a pre-built out of the box solution for that. And that's where we're just different. Like we focus not only on the retailer side of the fence, but also the supplier side of the fence as well. So long story short, you can consolidate. You don't have to use the EDI provider your customer says you have to use. You can make the best decision that's for your business, knowing that a provider like SPS can connect out to them on your behalf.
Wonderful. And I think this is going to be our last question unless we have another submission. But from a development standpoint, what type of new functionality and upgrade enhancements do you release, and how frequently are there updates?
So we go in line with the ERP publisher. So we actually have agreements in place with both publishers that we have to be within the newest release of that product. We have to be up to date within 30 or 60 days. So as you can imagine, we're heavily focused on that. So as you upgrade your system, EDI is not the one slowing it down. So I'd say that's number one in terms of like upgrade path and the development that we do. By the way, we have development staff that know Sage and Acumatica very well. So we're not outsourcing any of that. And then new functionality in those same upgrades, we actually roll out new functionality based upon tweaks, fixes, additional document sets that our customers ask for. So we poll our customers in terms of like, what are they looking for? What's common across our customer base? And then take that feedback and apply that into our roadmap, which then gets released into as organizations as the publishers are releasing their new ERP versions, we release those at the same time.
That's great to hear. I think that's our last question for the day. So I just want to reiterate, if you were wanting to see some more of the technology, definitely let us know in the post-webinar survey. Reach out to your customer rep, and the SWK team and the SBS team work very closely, and we will definitely get you that shown to you. And then just want to thank everyone for spending some time with us today. Respect your time, short 30 minutes. So reach out to the rep if you'd like some more information about SBS Commerce. And Bill, thank you so much for your time today and really informative presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney, and thank you all for the time. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.